You are thirsty right now, or you will be in an hour. And when that happens, you will walk to a tap, turn it, and drink. Without a single thought about what's in the water, without checking if it's safe. You don't test it, you don't smell it, you don't wait to see if the last person who drank from it got sick. You just drink. Now take all of that away. No tap, no pipe, no treatment plant, no germ theory, no chemistry, no way to know, absolutely no way, whether the water in front of you contains something that will kill you in 3 days. And you are very thirsty. You cannot go more than 3 days without water. The water is right there. Ancient humans couldn't test their water. They couldn't see bacteria. They didn't have the word for contamination. And yet, they survived 300,000 years by developing a water safety system so sophisticated it still runs inside your body today. You just don't know it's there. Let's be honest about how hard this problem actually is. Waterborne disease was one of the leading causes of death across most of human prehistory. Cholera, typhoid, giardia, dysentery, pathogens that live invisibly in contaminated water and kill with brutal efficiency, especially children. And here's what makes it so brutal as a survival problem. You cannot see it coming. Unlike a predator, there's no visual warning. Unlike spoiled food, water looks identical whether it contains cholera or not. Clear, still water can be lethally contaminated. Murky, moving water can be perfectly safe. There is no reliable visual cue. You are trying to detect an invisible threat in something you cannot survive without. And yet, the archaeological record shows something striking. Ancient human campsites don't scatter randomly across the landscape. They cluster around springs, fast-moving streams, elevated water catchments, not stagnant lowland pools, not still, dark water in valley depressions. This is not random. It is evidence of accumulated, transmitted knowledge about water quality, built up over generations without a single written word. On paper, a species with no chemistry, no microscope, and no way to distinguish lethal from safe water at a glance should have died of waterborne disease at a catastrophic rate. But the skeletons say otherwise. The campsites say otherwise. So what was the system? How did they actually do it? The human disgust response to water is not random. Psychologist Paul Rozin at the University of Pennsylvania established that disgust evolved specifically as a disease avoidance mechanism, one of the oldest and most universal of all human emotional responses. And water disgust triggers are among the most consistent across all cultures. Humans are instinctively repelled by stagnant water, by water with a visible surface film, by water with unusual color or turbidity, by water with sulfur or decay odors. These sensory cues are not perfectly accurate, but they are directionally correct. Stagnant, foul-smelling, discolored water genuinely is more likely to contain harmful pathogens than clear, fast-moving, odorless water. Evolution built a probabilistic contamination detector into the human sensory system, refined over millions of years of encountering water that sometimes killed people. Picture an ancient human approaching 2 water sources. One is a still, dark pool in a low depression. The surface has a slight film. The smell is faintly sulfurous. Something about it makes the body pull back slightly, a physical reluctance that doesn't feel like reasoning. Because it isn't reasoning. It's a biological alarm older than any thought about why. The second source is a spring, moving fast, clear, cold, no smell. The body moves toward it, not a decision, a pull. That pull kept people alive for 300,000 years before anyone had the word for bacteria. They didn't need to understand contamination. Their body already knew what to avoid. It just didn't have the language to explain why. Ancient humans were embedded in their environment in a way modern humans are not, observing the same landscapes across entire lifetimes, tracking the same water sources across seasons, watching what other animals drank and what they avoided. Several ecological indicators of water quality are reliably readable without chemistry. Healthy fish populations in a river indicate acceptable water quality. Dead fish indicate contamination. The presence of aquatic plants and insects indicates a functioning, healthy ecosystem. Frog presence is particularly significant. Frogs are extraordinarily sensitive to water quality. They disappear from contaminated sources before larger animals show any signs of illness. They are functionally the best natural water quality test that exists. A thriving riparian ecosystem around a water source is itself a continuous, long-running water quality test, being run by species that have been monitoring that source for longer than any human lifetime. A group approaches an unfamiliar river. They don't drink immediately. They watch. Are there fish? Are there frogs? Is there a deer trail leading to the water's edge? The watching takes minutes. What it's doing is reading an ecosystem that has been running its own continuous water quality test for years. The ecosystem already knows. You just have to learn to read it. Every animal near a clean water source was an unintentional water quality tester that had been running the test for years. Ancient humans learned to read the results. The most powerful tool ancient humans had for water safety wasn't individual instinct. It wasn't ecological reading. It was accumulated, transmitted, generational knowledge. Without language, every individual has to personally encounter a danger to understand it. A young member of the group who has never seen bad water has to discover through their own direct experience that certain water makes you sick. That's a brutal way to learn. With language, you can tell someone what you saw. Knowledge stops dying with individuals. It accumulates. It compounds over generations. A group that drinks from a particular spring for 100 years builds up a knowledge base about that specific water source that no individual could assemble in one lifetime. It's seasonal variations, the occasional contamination events, the downstream signs of trouble, the specific route to the safest point along a river. Australian Aboriginal oral traditions encode specific knowledge about seasonal water sources across landscapes that have been used for tens of thousands of years. Water sources that are dry in one season and full in another. Routes between sources that are only reliable in certain years. Knowledge so precise that researchers have used it to locate water in areas modern surveys had missed. An elder in an ancient group knows something about a water source 3 days' walk away. Something they learned from their own elder, who learned it from theirs. After heavy rain, wait 2 days. The water runs rust-colored first, then clears. The rust isn't the danger. What comes after the rust is. Nobody in the group knows why. They just know to wait. That knowledge is 200 years old. It costs nothing to carry. It is weightless, portable, and more accurate than any test that won't exist for another 200,000 years. The water knowledge wasn't in their heads. It was in the group. And as long as the group survived, the knowledge survived with it. Archaeological evidence of fire use by early humans dates back at least 400,000 years. At Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, 400,000 years of daily fire use means 400,000 years of water being heated. In clay pots, in stone-lined pits, in animal stomach pouches suspended over flames. Not to purify water, that concept doesn't exist yet. To cook food, to make hot drinks, because the fire is already there. But here's what was quietly happening alongside all of that. The people in groups that regularly heated their water got sick less often from certain kinds of illness than groups that didn't. Nobody knew why. But over generations, the observation accumulated the way all survival knowledge accumulates, through the relentless filter of who survived. The practice becomes embedded, not as a water safety protocol, just as what you do. The right way to prepare a camp, the way things are done. The knowledge passes forward as habit before it ever becomes understanding. They didn't know they were killing pathogens. They just knew that heating water was what you did. The understanding came 400,000 years later. The practice came first. Here's the part that changes how you see everything you just heard. Every reveal makes ancient water knowledge look admirably sophisticated, a pre-scientific approximation of what we now do properly. But when modern water treatment infrastructure fails, in emergencies, natural disasters, conflict zones, the knowledge that saves lives is almost identical to what ancient humans were doing. The World Health Organization's emergency water safety protocols: boil water, use fast-moving or elevated water sources over stagnant lowland water, watch for dead fish and absent aquatic life as contamination indicators, use visual and smell cues as preliminary screening. Every single item on that emergency list is something ancient humans were doing by default, every day, for 300,000 years. Modern water science didn't replace ancient water wisdom. It explained it. You're back at that tap, the same water, the same casual action, the same 3 seconds you've never thought about. But now you know what's underneath it. 300,000 years of accumulated knowledge that made this moment possible, built by people who had none of the science and had to figure it out the hard way, generation after generation, by watching what happened when they got it wrong. The disgust you feel at stagnant water, the preference for clear, moving streams, the instinct to boil what looks uncertain. That's not modern hygiene. That's the oldest science that exists, running in a body that is 300,000 years older than the water treatment plant down the road.